There has been a lot of discussion about what the ACC's playoff fate is going to be. Not long ago on the show, I said the ACC is looking like a one-bid conference if Miami's going to be down at number 18. Well, all of a sudden, after losses, ironically, by ACC teams, the committee found some respect for Miami again, bumped them back up to 15. And you went, wait a minute, hold on for a sec. Miami could be, but let's go even simpler than that. Even simpler than Miami being a 10-2 at large. Miami was 10-2 last year, but they've got the win over Notre Dame. That's rather important. Don't forget. If Miami goes 10-2, could they get left out? Yes, they absolutely could because it happened just a year ago. But let's say Notre Dame were to somehow lose a game and that diminishes Miami's win and all that. Okay. There's a much simpler path for the ACC to get a second team into the playoff. I didn't say simple, I said simpler. Georgia Tech has an incredible opportunity. So when this season began, I talked about the prospect of the Big 12 or the ACC getting two teams into the league. And I looked through that lens by examining the schedules and saying, well, who has the ability to have a marquee non-conference win or two that could, if they handle business the rest of the season, result in them being ranked high enough to just get into the college football playoff. And one of those teams was Georgia Tech. Now, Georgia Tech is indeed ranked lower than their record would indicate. I'll throw up my rankings on the screen. I've got them in the same spot that the playoff committee actually does at number 15. Or excuse me, as the AP rankings have got them at. The playoff rankings have got Georgia Tech at 16th. So a little bit lower than I think they should be. I've got them at 15. But the opportunity for Georgia Tech is so real because Pitt is not a team that I've ever had ranked, but is a solid win if they pull that off this week. That's going to be a huge game for them. But then you set up a play-in game for the playoff, regardless of the ACC championship game, if they're able to beat Georgia. And might I remind you, in Athens last year, Georgia Tech took them to, 7 overtimes? Oh, look at that. Georgia Tech and Georgia just played another overtime from a year ago. Now, do I think that Georgia Tech is going to win both of these games? I do not, because Georgia is starting to play some really good football. Just ask Texas from their weekend showdown how Georgia has figured things out. That doesn't mean my prediction, hypothetical, does not actually matter. That's just how I view it. I'm not expecting this to happen, which is why I still say it's less likely that the ACC gets two teams in. But for a brief moment in time, guys like Josh Pate were suggesting the ACC could get no teams in. Well, that went out the window. Virginia, who I'll talk about in a moment, took care of business there because they took care of Duke in incredibly convincing fashion. So if Georgia Tech beats Pitt this week and then beats Georgia, you will see a jump in my rankings like there hasn't been before. Georgia Tech would be 11-1 with a win over the Georgia Bulldogs, who are playing really good football. They're not just a great team on paper. They're not just a great program with a great head coach. They're a team that is also playing incredibly well at this point in time and has a great resume to back it up this season. Their only loss, of course, a 3-point defeat at home to Alabama. So if Georgia Tech is 11-1, I don't care if they win the ACC. They should be in the playoff, just like SMU a season ago. And Georgia Tech, frankly, has more quality wins in this hypothetical in Georgia than SMU had last year. Now, we only have 1 year of data of the committee operating with a 12-team playoff to see how they act. Maybe it'll change a little bit this year. We'll see. But for Georgia Tech, I don't think they could possibly get left out if they have 11 wins and a victory over the Bulldogs. Now, if they don't win that game, let's say they beat Pitt and they lose to Georgia, which is what I anticipate happening, they can still get in the playoff. That'll be a one-bid scenario, most likely for the ACC, unless Miami can come into play. But Georgia Tech, with their current trajectory, is on track if they go 11-1 to meet in the ACC championship game, one of Virginia or SMU. Because those are the other one-loss teams. The other one is Pitt. Pitt could still but Georgia Tech plays Pitt this week. So from the ashes, the ACC's kind of risen itself up and figured out a way to just put itself into the fold. They have just found a way to get themselves into this spot. Good for the ACC. They deserve it. I'm about rewarding teams that are deserving, that have earned it on the field, not inserting my own projections hardly at all, if at all, in the rankings in my top 25 every week. Of course, I'm not the committee. I should be, but I'm not. So let's talk about Virginia very briefly. Their offense got going on the road at Duke. This game wasn't as close as the 34-17 final score indicated. This is up there for one of my worst outright picks of the year. It is probably in the top 3. Indiana losing at home to Illinois is still probably number 1. But this one is probably in the top 3 or 4 of here's a pick I made, here's who I think is going to win, and then that team just gets absolutely boat raced. So Virginia got a bounce back. And here's the good news. Here's the good news for Virginia as they tried, if they're an ACC champion, they're getting into the playoff. There's enough there. I mean, their losses to NC State and Wake Forest, at least those are bowl teams. I'm not telling you those are great losses, but Wake Forest, Jake Dickert, by the way, at Wake Forest, should probably be the ACC Coach of the Year, unless Virginia goes on to win the conference championship game. But Virginia has just one game left in its regular season. They're off this week, and then they play Virginia Tech. They play Spencer, they play who? They play Virginia Tech. James Franklin's not going to coach in that game. But I tell you what, there could not be a better precursor to the James Franklin era in Blacksburg than the Hokies spoiling Virginia's very real college football playoff hopes the last week of the regular season. 2 days after Thanksgiving, Virginia Tech fans would have an immense amount to be thankful for. Everything you say around the dinner table that Thursday, James Franklin is your head coach. Maybe you found some Black Friday shopping deals. And on Saturday, I tell you what, every Virginia Tech fan would take that right now. And frankly, you should be happy whether you win that game or not. My point, though, is I get the sense that as a program, Virginia Tech is going to be ready to play that game. In a rivalry setting, crazy things can happen. It is the way that the world works. Death, taxes, and rivalry games can get absolutely out of hand. So Virginia did an important thing for the conference in knocking Duke out of the picture. Virginia Tech could just make it all really, really fun. I'm not rooting against Virginia in any way, shape, or form. I'm just telling you that would be a good time. So that's where things stand. Not the worst scenario for the ACC. Would Miami get in over Vanderbilt? Probably not in the eyes of the committee. In my rankings, they would. But ACC, SEC, that lot has to happen. We've got 2 weeks of regular season college football to watch first.